Hi, welcome to Beer Banter. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Mike.
And we're here to talk about a wonderful beer that I'm very excited to try called Schneider Weisse Eisbock.
Excellent. Let's jump right into this one. If you don't mind giving us a start on the vitals of this one, so that people know what we're going to get into.
I won't scare you, but it's big.
It's big. It's a big one.
It's a 12% alcohol by volume. This is going to be, I'm guessing, fairly dark because of its concentration of the alcohols and the style of beer being a base beer is a Weizenbock. But I will say, I don't know much about the IBUs. I think it's going to be probably not perceived very high, but you never know because it probably might want to match some of that sweetness.
Yeah, absolutely. The website gave us 15.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. SRM. What are your thoughts on the SRM for a Weizenbock of this?
I can't wait to get into a glass, but I'm going to guess it's pretty dark. I'm guessing it's going to be dark brown.
Yeah, dark brown.
See. Opaque and cloudy. But
I like it. So before we get into the tasting of this beer, I had a lot of fun researching this beer. There's a lot of history involved with both this company and the style. There's a little bit of they call it an Eisbock. Icebocks were traditionally made from freezing beer, and it happened as an accident, actually. And legend has it, they weren't thoroughly documented back then, but the legend has it that as they were transporting these stronger bocks, the barrels would freeze in the wintertime. And so in order to save whatever they could from the batch of beer, the brewers would then extract what wasn't frozen, and much to their delight, they found that it was not only strong in alcohol content, which we know in the wintertime the stronger beers are really popular, but it was also very concentrated in the aroma and the flavors. So it's pretty much all this denseness that was in the beer, and it's basically the beer with a substantial portion of the water removed.
Yeah, they call it freeze distilling. Basically, think of it as just taking a beer and freezing some of the water off. What's left is all that sugar, all that delicious beer, just concentrated.
Yeah, and so for this, what they call an Eisbock in particular is from the Schneider Weisse company, and they do all wheat beers. And so traditionally, an Eisbock would not necessarily be a wheat beer. This is more in the category traditionally of a Weizenbock, but it's prepared in the Eisbock fashion. And
I'm excited.
Yeah, Weizenbock, really strong beer. Before we get into the tasting, we'll go ahead and crack yours open. I'll just give a little bit more about the history of this brewery in particular, because it really is a very important brewery to the German tradition. It came around, initially the original brewery was opened in 1607 by Duke Maximilian I. And he started producing wheat beers. He also had a brewery called the Haufbrauhaus, which produced brown beers, and he wanted to produce wheat beers. Wheat beers, over time, kind of started to lose popularity in Germany, according to the German purity law, which is what word again?
Reinheitsgebot.
One of our favorite words to say. Due to the Reinheitsgebot, you could not brew wheat beers unless you were part of German royalty. And so this brewery had been run in German royalty, and they were no longer interested in producing the wheat beers. So in, let me get the date here, 1872, King Ludwig II sold to Georg Schneider I, and from that day on, Georg Schneider and his family have been producing wheat beers from that brewery. So that's about what we have for the history here. Just to touch a little bit more on Eisbock, they are still produced today, as we can see here, obviously using more modern equipment, and so that they can regulate it and be able to produce it year-round.
Yeah, I'm curious on how what today's equipment looks like to produce the Eisenbach, or the Eisbock. I'm picturing they really freeze say it's a cylindrical conical fermenter, that the cylinder cone. I feel like they must try to freeze it, the outside real well, so the water gets frozen to the inside of the tank. But I really don't know. That'd be an interesting one. If you do know, why don't you leave a comment below? I'd be interested to find out exactly what process in what tanks and vessels they use.
And if we don't hear from you, then we'll just have to do our own research, and we'll get back to you on Eisbock.
You know how I like to do my research?
With a beer in your hand?
Beer in hand.
It always helps.
All right, well, cheers.
Let's get into this.
I'm noticing a kind of off-white, almost like a slightly tan head.
Yep.
It seems to have pretty good retention. I'm seeing some really kind of rockiness to it.
Yeah, you were spot on with the darker brown. And definitely opaque in color and hazy because of the wheats. I've got some crazy dregs floating around in this thing. This is definitely a bottle conditioned beer. Lots of dark fruit, resinous on the nose. I can smell some of the alcohol.
Almost got a little bit of like a really, almost slightly metallic, but it seems like almost like a little bit of.
I was gonna go ahead and just throw leather out there a little bit.
Deep fruit.
Yep.
Really.
Old plums.
Yeah, like it's just weathered. Like you can just see that old kind of richness that's just been developed.
I see you do a little finger up there. For those of you who are wondering what Matthew just did with rubbing his hands, there's a trick that we learned in an off-flavor tasting seminar to where if you were suspecting a little bit of a metallic taste in the beer, you can actually dip your finger into the beer, rub it on your skin, and if metallic... It's not metallic. I get nothing but alcohol when I rub it on my skin.
Someone booze. I could have told you it. Yeah, the metals, the metallic, say if it had a abnormal amount of copper or magnesium, anything like that, it actually reacts with the fatty acids in your skin, and it becomes volatile enough where you can actually smell it.
Yeah.
An old German trick, or so it was told. Let's get into the review. I mean, getting deep. I mean, that fruit we talked about is just resonating right into the flavor. I mean, rich, plummy, molasses. It's got this richness to it that
you can taste some esters from the wheat and the Hefeweizen yeast. That's very common to it. But man, the alcohol is very present. I mean, when you're talking about a 12% alcohol beer, there's not a whole lot you can do to mask that level of alcohol on a beer.
I almost get like almost a slight Venus. Like I get like this. It reminds me a little bit of almost like a red wine, like a deep, big cab. Yeah, it has this earthiness and richness,
almost sweetness. I mean, you could almost go as far as to say it's kind of like a light port.
There you go. You know what? Spot on. I really get that Venus quality of almost a port, like sweetness.
And it's the heaviness, the sweet, dense, sugary.
Finish is definitely lingering with a sweetness and warming effect. I think that warming is helpful with the sweetness because it really kind of almost dries your mouth out a little bit. You're still getting a lot of stickiness, a lot of sweetness, but what's lingering is not, it's more the alcohol mashed with the sweetness. It's kind of almost a balance and harmony. I really, really am enjoying the end of this beer.
And for me, with the strength and the malt that's needed to balance out the alcohol, it's similar. And for those of you who are familiar and drink a lot of barley wines, it has that same kind of dense, heavy maltiness that is needed to balance out the alcohol content. For me, I enjoy what they're doing with this beer. It's not a beer that I would drink often. The really dense, malty, high alcohol content ones are fun in really small doses on special occasions.
Yeah, if I was going to put any kind of pairing with this, I'd say good with any kind of really big, either deep red meat, or you could almost fall onto almost a complimentary side of dessert. But you'd want something with some fat to cut through some of that sweetness.
Yeah.
Like almost a roasted pork chop, like something grilled.
Yeah,
really
or if you're talking about desserts, I would immediately go to cheesecake.
Oh, well, thanks again for joining us. I think I'm going to enjoy finishing this beer, doing a little bit of research on the future of another Eisbock to do.
Cheers.
This is delicious.
Yeah, Prost.
Prost.